It was a night drenched in the hum of fluorescent lights and the quiet murmur of midnight rain when my wife casually asked for a break. Instead of the space to rediscover herself, I made a choice that would unearth every hidden secret. I hacked her iCloud. In one fateful click, I unlocked a digital Pandora's box filled with messages, photos, and a trail of betrayal so raw that the truth, when revealed, was nothing short of pure, excruciating betrayal. 4 years, I had believed our marriage was a sanctuary, a fortress built on shared dreams, unyielding trust, and whispered promises in the quiet darkness of our home. We had weathered storms together, celebrated triumphs, and even embraced the occasional rough patch with the hope that love would mend all wounds. When my wife first mentioned that she needed a break, I felt a ripple of uncertainty, a fleeting worry that perhaps we had grown complacent. Yet I chose to honor her request, believing that space might help us rediscover our passion, our connection. I trusted her implicitly, convinced that our love was resilient enough to withstand the occasional turbulence. But the very day she asked for that break, something inside me shifted, a gnawing need to know what she truly meant by break. I started to question every subtle change, the slightly distracted smile, the distant look in her eyes when she said goodbye, and the way her voice sometimes faltered when she talked about her personal time. I tried to brush these off as normal uncertainties in a long-term relationship. Yet, as the hours turned into days, the doubts in my mind fermented into a dark curiosity that I couldn't ignore. Late one sleepless night, when the house was swallowed by silence and the only light came from the flickering screen of my laptop, I decided to take a step that would change everything. My technical background, once a hobby, became my refuge in a moment of desperate need for clarity. With trembling hands, I hacked into her iCloud account. I told myself it was only to check if she was truly taking time for herself. I never imagined that what I would uncover would be a roadmap of deceit. The digital files, the unguarded messages, the photos, each one told a story of a life lived in secret, a life where she had crossed boundaries I never knew existed. As I scrolled through her emails and messages, my heart pounded faster with every revelation. I discovered intimate exchanges with a man I had never heard her mention, a series of texts that were both flirtatious and brazen, detailing meetings at upscale restaurants, weekend getaways, and even photos taken in places far removed from our everyday life. The evidence was irrefutable and excruciatingly clear. The break she had asked for was not a moment of introspection but a license to live a double life. I could see it all, laid out before me in stark digital clarity. Every conversation was a dagger to the trust one had so foolishly given, every image a vivid confirmation of her betrayal. The shock of it all was overwhelming. I sat there in the dead silence of my study, the glow of my screen casting long shadows on the walls, as my mind struggled to process the enormity of what I had uncovered. My hands shook, and I felt a cold, searing emptiness spread through my chest, a pain so raw and real it threatened to paralyze me. I had known, deep down, that something was amiss, but I never imagined the depths of the deception. The digital evidence revealed a side of her that I had never seen, a passionate, reckless side that had been hidden away behind a carefully curated facade of normalcy. In that moment of solitary despair, I began to document every detail in my journal. I wrote feverishly about the images, the texts, and the metadata that stamped each revelation with precise, inescapable truth. I trusted you with my everything, I scrawled in jagged, tear-stained lines, and now I see that our life was built on lies. Every word on the page was a painful admission of betrayal, each sentence a raw testament to the collapse of a world I once believed was unassailable. As the hours passed in that bleak solitude, a storm of emotions raged within me, heartbreak, anger, and a dark, budding resolve. The evidence was undeniable, and the reality was a bitter pill I could no longer swallow. In the midst of my grief, a thought emerged. I could let this betrayal destroy me, or I could use it as the catalyst for reclaiming my identity. I realized that while the pain was overwhelming, it also held the potential to forge a new path, a future built not on shattered trust but on the unyielding power of truth. That night, under the relentless drip of rain and the hum of the old radiator, I made a promise to myself. I vowed that I would no longer be a passive bystander to my own heartbreak. I would confront the truth head-on, expose every lie, and reclaim the future that was rightfully mine. The files on her iCloud were not just data, they were the undeniable record of a betrayal that would forever alter the course of my life. I turned off the computer, the images of her hidden messages burning in my mind, and stared out into the darkness. The rain was relentless, a ceaseless reminder of the tears I had yet to shed. In that moment, I knew that my journey was just beginning, a journey into the depths of truth and the painful path of retribution. I would have to gather every piece of evidence, every shattered dream, and every whispered secret to confront the woman I had loved so dearly. And though the road ahead promised anguish and uncertainty, it also promised the chance to rebuild a life defined by honesty and self-respect, a life where betrayal would no longer hold me captive. In the days following that fateful moment when I discovered the damning contents of her iCloud, my world seemed to tilt off its axis. Every waking minute was consumed by a turbulent blend of shock, heartbreak, and an all-consuming fury. I found myself haunted by images of what I had seen, a digital diary of betrayals, intimate messages, and photos that chronicled the secret life she had hidden behind the facade of a marital break. It felt as though every byte of data I had uncovered was a dagger driven into the heart of our shared past. I couldn't escape the constant replay of her words and images on my screen, each notification a grim reminder of the truth I never wanted to face. For days, I wandered the confines of our home like a man possessed by dark thoughts. The familiar rooms, the kitchen where we once shared laughter over coffee, the living room where our quiet conversations had once woven dreams of tomorrow, now felt like cold, sterile spaces filled with echoes of lies. I isolated myself in our study, the only place that could contain the chaos swirling in my mind. Under the relentless glare of my computer screen, I re-watched every incriminating image, replayed every message, and compiled an unyielding dossier of evidence that testified to her betrayal. Each document, every screenshot, was meticulously catalogued with dates and times, forming a chronological narrative that left no room for doubt. My wife had used our break as a pretext to indulge in a secret life, a life that was far from the words she had once whispered to me in a moment of vulnerability. I remember the moment I sat down at my desk, my hands trembling as I began to scroll through her iCloud backups. The interface, usually an impersonal digital repository, became a window into an alternate reality, one where candid photos of clandestine meetings, flirtatious text conversations, and even location data confirmed her visits to places I had never known she frequented, all painted a vivid portrait of deception. I felt my stomach churn as I realized that every carefully hidden file was a piece of a puzzle I had never been meant to see. The pain was almost physical. It was as if every pixel of those images burned into my soul, igniting a fury that I could no longer contain. I spent endless hours in that study, the relentless hum of my computer a stark counterpoint to the pounding of my heart. With every new piece of evidence I uncovered, I scribbled frantically in my journal, my pen etching out lines of bitter anger and sorrow. I gave you my trust, my heart, everything, and you repaid it with lies, I wrote over and over, the words a mantra of betrayal that echoed in the silence of the room. I began to piece together a timeline of her secret activities, the dates when she claimed she needed space, the times when she was away, and the messages that spoke of intimate rendezvous with someone else. Each revelation deepened the chasm between the life I thought we had and the reality of her duplicity. In the midst of this emotional storm, I started to question every moment we'd ever shared. I replayed the times when she seemed distracted, when her eyes would linger on her phone a little too long, and when she brushed off my concerns with a laugh that now sounded hollow. The memory of those moments stung bitterly. It was as if I had been walking through a minefield of subtle warnings, each one a prelude to this devastating revelation. The trust that had once been the cornerstone of our relationship now lay in ruins, and with it, the life I had so carefully built around our shared dreams. I found myself oscillating between moments of paralyzing despair and a burgeoning, dangerous resolve. Some nights, I would lie awake, staring blankly at the ceiling, trying desperately to make sense of the digital evidence that had unraveled everything. Other times, an intense, seething anger would propel me forward, a desire not just to understand, but to reclaim the dignity that had been so callously stolen from me. I began to realize that the truth, as painful as it was, held within it the power to transform me. I could either be crushed by the weight of her betrayal or use it as a catalyst to forge a new, unbreakable identity. As the days turned into a relentless blur of sorrow and introspection, I reached out to my closest friend, Michael, whose steady presence had always been a refuge during life's darkest moments. One cold, rain-soaked evening, we met at our favorite, dimly lit diner, where the atmosphere was heavy with unspoken understanding. Over steaming cups of coffee, I laid bare the horror of what I had discovered. "She's not just asking for a break," I told him, my voice raw with grief and anger. "She's been living a double life, and I hacked her iCloud to see the truth. I've seen everything, Michael. The messages, the photos, the secret locations, it's all there. I trusted her with everything, and she repaid that trust with betrayal." Michael's eyes filled with sympathy as he listened intently. "You have every right to feel betrayed," he said softly, "but you also have every right to reclaim your power. This isn't just about her cheating, it's about the life you thought you had, and now it's time to rebuild it on your own terms. His words, simple yet profound, stirred something deep within me, a spark of determination to take control of my destiny, no matter how painful the road ahead might be. Inspired by Michael's support, I decided that I could no longer remain a silent sufferer. I began to methodically compile every piece of evidence, creating a dossier that was as detailed as it was damning. I organized the digital footprints, each message, each photo, every timestamp, into a comprehensive timeline that left no doubt about the extent of her deception. I cross-referenced the dates with our shared calendars and even analyzed metadata from the photos to map out her secret rendezvous. Every discovery was a brutal confirmation that the wife I thought I knew had built an alternate life, a world where I was never meant to belong. At the same time, I started to rehearse the conversation I knew I would have with her. I practiced in front of the mirror for hours on end, my voice trembling at first, then growing steadier as I forced myself to articulate the questions that burned in my heart. When did this secret life begin? Who is the man behind these intimate messages? Why did you lie to me about everything? Each rehearsal was both a catharsis and a preparation for the inevitable confrontation, a moment when the full, harsh truth would be laid bare, and I would no longer be the silent victim of her betrayal. As the reality of the situation settled in, I also began to plan for the future, a future that, while scarred by the betrayal, held the promise of rebirth. I realized that I could no longer live in a space where deceit reigned supreme. I envisioned a life where I reclaimed my identity, where every lie was replaced by an unwavering commitment to honesty and self-respect. The pain of her actions, though excruciating, was also a call to action, a reminder that I had the strength to rebuild my life from the ruins of shattered trust. I spent long nights drafting plans and strategies, some practical, others born from the depths of my wounded pride. I explored ways to secure my digital life, to ensure that nothing else could be taken from me without my knowledge. I met with a trusted cybersecurity expert who helped me understand how to safeguard my personal information. In that process, I began to see that while her betrayal had cut deep, it had also awakened a part of me that refused to be subdued. I was no longer the man who would meekly endure deception. I was a man determined to fight back, to reclaim what was mine, and to step boldly into a future defined by truth. In the solitude of those days, I also turned to my journal, my confidant, my silent witness. I poured out every fragment of my despair, every question that tormented me, every moment of clarity that emerged amid the darkness. I trusted you with my everything, I wrote in raw, jagged lines, and you shattered that trust with lies and secrets. But I will rise. I will reclaim my life, no matter how many pieces it takes. Each line was a battle cry, a promise to myself that I would not allow the betrayal to define my entire existence. The evidence in my dossier grew thicker with each passing day, and the timeline of her secret life was a relentless barrage of pain that fortified my resolve. I saw clearly now that she had not only broken my trust but had also dismantled the very foundation of our marriage. The digital traces were as cold and unforgiving as ice, each message, each hidden photo, a stark reminder of the lies that had been woven into the fabric of our shared life. And though the pain was almost unbearable, it was also the catalyst for a transformation I could no longer avoid. As the day of confrontation loomed closer, I felt a mixture of trepidation and fierce determination rising within me. I knew that the moment I would face her, I would need every ounce of strength I had mustered over these agonizing days. The confrontation wasn't going to be just a cathartic release of anger, it would be a defining moment, one that would force me to choose between lingering in the ruins of our past or stepping boldly into a future built on my own terms. I had come to understand that while betrayal had stripped away the layers of our shared illusions, it had also revealed the raw, unyielding truth of who I was. A man capable of rising from the depths of despair, a man determined to forge a new path out of the wreckage. In those final hours, I reread every line of my journal, each entry a reminder of the heartbreak that had propelled me to this point. The storm inside me was still raging, but it had settled into a determined cadence, a rhythm that promised that no matter how deep the wounds, there was a way to heal and rebuild. I took long, solitary walks in the early morning, letting the crisp air clear my thoughts and infuse me with a renewed sense of purpose. Every step was a silent declaration that I would no longer be defined by her betrayal. Now, as the time for confrontation draws near, I gather the last of my strength and prepare to step into the arena of truth. I have assembled my dossier of evidence, documented every painful detail, and rehearsed my words until they resonate with the clarity of a final verdict. I am no longer the man who lived in denial, who allowed hope to mask deception. I am a man awakened to the harsh reality of betrayal, a man who has turned his pain into a weapon, his heartbreak into a roadmap for reclaiming his dignity. The storm of deception has reached its crescendo, and soon, I will stand face to face with the woman I once loved, a woman who, in her quest for a secret life, shattered the foundation of everything we had built together. My heart is heavy, yet it beats with a newfound resolve that promises a future free from the chains of deceit. I am ready to confront the truth, to demand answers, and to set in motion the final reckoning that will define my destiny. I woke one crisp morning to a silence so stark it felt like the universe was holding its breath. Every shadow in the apartment whispered of secrets that I had uncovered through my illicit dive into her iCloud. That night, when she asked for a break, I had made a choice so irrevocable that my life would never again be the same. I had hacked her iCloud out of a desperate need for truth. And what I found was pure, unadulterated betrayal: emails, messages, photos, every digital footprint a testament to a hidden affair. In that first 100 words of my raw realization, every heartbeat declared that the woman I loved had been living a life designed solely for someone else. I knew I had to act. I knew that the time had come to dismantle the lies and rebuild from the ashes. The journey from that moment to the day of reckoning was a brutal one. I spent countless nights in solitude, the only light the ghostly glow of my computer screen as I combed through her digital life. Every folder, every message, every photo revealed layers of deception that I had never imagined. I watched as old emails, once trivial details about her day, transformed into damning evidence of late-night rendezvous and secretive rendezvous with a man whose name repeatedly glowed on her conversation list. I felt the crushing weight of each discovery like a hammer to my heart. Every revelation was a betrayal all over again. The photos of her in places I'd never known she frequented, the messages filled with affectionate language, and even calendar entries that had been hidden away as if to erase any record of her infidelity. In that dark period, I became both detective and grieving husband. I spent hours creating detailed timelines and annotated documents, my own dossier of betrayal. I recorded every piece of evidence meticulously, cross-referencing dates with our shared memories. I even reached out to a friend with technical expertise who confirmed that the metadata on the photos and the timestamps on the emails were beyond dispute. The truth was laid out in cold, hard digital code, and it felt like a storm had erupted in my chest. Yet amid the raw, searing pain of betrayal, a curious transformation began. The anger that threatened to drown me slowly evolved into a burning determination. I realized that while the truth was devastating, it also liberated me from the prison of ignorance. I had the power now to reclaim my future, a future that I refused to have defined by her deception. I began to question every moment I'd shared with her, the times when her laughter had seemed too forced, the secretive glances, the inexplicable silences when I was by her side. Every detail, once lost in the comfort of love, now coalesced into undeniable proof that my trust had been shattered. As days turned into weeks, I faced the torturous decision of how to respond. I could either wallow in despair and let the betrayal define me, or I could channel the pain into something transformative, a final reckoning that would force her to confront the full measure of her actions. I chose the latter. I resolved to expose her hidden affair in a way that left no doubt in anyone's mind. I wasn't just seeking vengeance for its own sake. I was determined to reclaim my dignity and to let the truth shine as a beacon for every moment of false hope I had once clung to. I began by reaching out to an attorney who specialized in complex marital disputes. I handed over my dossier, every screenshot, every email, every meticulously logged timestamp, and we discussed how best to proceed. Legally, I wanted to ensure that my rights were protected, but more than that, I wanted the evidence of her betrayal to be part of the public record. I was prepared to fight for every penny, every shared asset, and every fragment of the future I had once envisioned together. The attorney's pragmatic advice reinforced my resolve. This was not just a personal matter, it was a matter of principle, a stand against the deceit that had robbed me of so much. Parallel to the legal battle, I began to document my journey publicly on a blog, initially a private space for my thoughts, soon transformed into a platform where others who had been hurt by similar betrayals found solace. I wrote in searing, unfiltered prose about the moment I hacked her iCloud, about the shock that followed when I uncovered her secret world, and about the cascade of evidence that confirmed what my heart had long suspected. I bared my soul to anyone willing to listen, recounting every painful detail with an honesty that was as cathartic as it was raw. The response was overwhelming: messages of support, shared stories of heartache, and words that urged me to keep fighting. In those exchanges, I discovered that while betrayal cuts deep, it also binds us together in a common struggle for truth and healing. At home, the transformation was equally profound. The apartment we had once shared as a symbol of our union now felt like a battleground of memories. I could no longer look at the framed photographs without feeling the sting of lies. So, I began a painstaking process of redecoration, not to erase the past, but to redefine the space as mine, a sanctuary for my rebirth. I removed the old pictures and replaced them with artwork that spoke of resilience, a mural of a phoenix rising from ashes, bold and unyielding. I repainted the walls in cool, calming hues that signified a new beginning, and every object I chose was a deliberate step toward reclaiming my identity. Meanwhile, the confrontation loomed ever closer. I knew that sooner or later, I would have to face her and ask the hard questions, questions that had haunted me every day since that fateful discovery. I rehearsed my confrontation relentlessly, standing before the mirror until my voice was steady with determination. Why did you lie? When did you decide that our love wasn't enough? How could you betray me in such a way? Each question was a promise to myself that I would not be silenced by the weight of her deception. I envisioned the moment when I would confront her, picture her shocked, perhaps even remorseful, as I laid out the evidence in cold, unforgiving detail. I knew it would be painful, I knew it might even shatter the last remnants of what we had. But I also knew that I had to do it. The truth, no matter how brutal, was the only way to reclaim my life. The day of the confrontation arrived on a bleak, overcast morning, the sky heavy with the promise of rain. I sat in the living room, the dossier of evidence spread out before me on the coffee table, and waited for her to return home. Every minute felt like an eternity as I wrestled with a tumult of emotions, fear, anger, sorrow, and a stubborn resolve that refused to let her lies go unchallenged. I knew that when she stepped through the door, there would be no turning back. I had reached the point of no return. I was a man reborn in the fire of betrayal, determined to cast aside the illusions of the past and step into a future defined by my own truth. As the door finally creaked open, I saw her standing there, her expression a mix of shock and resignation. I motioned for her to sit, and as she did, I laid the evidence before her like a gauntlet thrown down at her feet. I hacked your iCloud because I needed the truth, I said, my voice resonating with a raw, steady intensity. I trusted you, and you betrayed me in the most unforgivable way. These files, these messages, they're the proof that our love was built on lies. My words were simple yet laden with the full weight of my pain and determination. 4 long, agonizing minutes, she tried to speak, her voice wavering as if caught between remorse and defiance. Every excuse she offered crumbled under the scrutiny of the evidence before her. I pressed on, each question a cut into the fabric of our shared past. When did this begin? Who is he? Why did you think I wouldn't find out? With every word, I felt the old bonds of trust dissolve, replaced by a stark clarity that left no room for denial. In that charged moment, I realized that the woman I once loved had constructed a world of deception that I could never reclaim. And though the pain was searing, it was also a moment of liberation, a final severance of the ties that had once bound me to a life built on false promises. After that devastating confrontation, everything changed. I moved out of the home we had once dreamed of sharing. The apartment that had once been filled with our laughter and love was now too heavy with memories of betrayal. I began the slow, painful process of untangling our lives, dividing assets, severing joint accounts, and, most importantly, reclaiming my identity. Every legal step, every farewell to our shared past, was a step toward building a future where I was in control, where the truth was no longer hidden behind comforting lies. In the weeks and months that followed, I channeled my heartbreak into rebuilding my life. I continued to write on my blog, sharing my journey with raw honesty and the unyielding determination of a man who had been reborn from the ashes of betrayal. Readers from all walks of life shared their own stories of pain and redemption, and in that shared vulnerability, I found solace. I embraced new challenges at work, forging relationships with people who valued integrity and transparency, and slowly, I began to rediscover the person I had once been, strong, resilient, and unafraid to love again, but only on my own terms. Today, as I sit in the quiet of my new home, surrounded by the simple beauty of reclaimed space and a life rebuilt from the wreckage, I feel a profound sense of closure and hope. The pain of her betrayal remains as scars, indelible marks on my heart, but they no longer define me. Instead, they are a testament to the battles I have fought and the strength I have gained. I have learned that even the deepest wounds can pave the way for a new beginning, a future where truth, honesty, and self-respect are the cornerstones of every relationship I nurture. My journey from the moment I hacked her iCloud to expose her secret life, to the final confrontation that tore down every false promise, has been long and agonizing. Yet, it has also been a journey of transformation, a brutal reckoning that freed me from the shackles of deception and set me on a path to rebuild my life with unwavering authenticity. I now stand as a man who has reclaimed his destiny, a man who refuses to be defined by the lies of the past. The truth, though painful, has set me free, and every sunrise reminds me that there is always hope for renewal. As I look forward to a future where my identity is mine to shape, I embrace the lessons of that dark chapter. I know that betrayal can cut deep, but it can also force us to rise above, to rebuild, and to discover strengths we never knew we had. I am no longer the man who lived in the shadow of deceit. I am a man reborn, ready to create a life defined by the light of truth and the promise of new beginnings.